Welcome to Chapter 11. We are going to make this these notes for this chapter short and sweet. We're going to practice and get it done. Some of this is review. Some of this is a step beyond what you might have done before. But it's all very practical because you're going to need to find area, surface area, and volume in life. So we're going to start with area. And we are going to learn about this fancy word, apothem. Apothem. Say it out loud. Apothem. These are the basic formulas to find the area of a trapezoid, a parallelogram, a rectangle, a square, a triangle, a circle. Right? I forget the whole surface thing. It's area equals these things. The B is your base, not necessarily always the bottom, okay, or what it's sitting on, but the base is what we draw the height to. So the height and the base intersect, not necessarily perpendicularly, not necessarily at the midpoint or anything like that. Okay, erase some of my scribbles. The height would be the height, so from the base, and this is really base 1 and this is base 2, like over here in the trapezoid. We actually use both of our bases, okay, because they're different in a trapezoid. In a parallelogram, the two bases are the same, so we just use one, and the height is the distance between the bases. On a parallelogram, on a rectangle, okay. A triangle, the height is from the vertex to the base. And then on a square, we've got a base and a height, like in a rectangle, right? It's the same, but because it's a square, we can really say it's one of those sides squared because the base and the height are going to be the same in a square because all the sides are the same. And then in a circle, remember that R stands for radius, okay? This is a pi, P-I, not P-I-E, and you would probably know it as 3.14. It is actually the fraction 22/7. We have a pi button on our fancy calculators in the classroom, which we will discuss as we go. Yes, write this down. But just write trapezoid formula, or parallelogram formula, rectangle formula. You don't have to do all the pictures and all the crazy. I don't even ignore that surface thing. Okay? So let's use some of our formulas. In this triangle, we know this side is 6, and we know from there to the opposite vertex is 3.8. So that's the height, and that's the base. In a triangle, we're going to do, 1/2 base times height. So that means we're going to do 1/2 times 6 times 3.8. And you can just put that in your calculator just like that. If you want to, in your calculator, instead of putting the 1/2 in parentheses and all that, you could just say 0.5, right? Okay, and when we put that in our calculator, we get 11.4. Notice it tells us those were all in miles, so our answer is miles. Get used to including the units. If it doesn't give you units, you would just write 11.4 UN for units. I will take off for not having units on your quizzes and such. So let's try this triangle over here. Notice that here we have this piece outside, right? And so the height perpendicular to this side, so this is our height, and this is our base. That's a funky looking B, sorry. We don't have to worry about that piece right there. Our base is 7.1, even though technically it extends over here to get to the 6.8. So we're going to do 0.5 times 6.8 times 7.1 and get an answer on our calculator. And we get 24.14 feet. Don't, oh, I'm sorry, you know what, the whole units thing, because it's area, the reason we have to do this is because it's feet squared, because we just multiplied a feet times a feet, and so therefore it's feet squared and miles squared. That matters, because when we get to volume, it's feet cubed, and that's how you know that it's volume and not area, because it's cubed, not squared. Okay, here we have a trapezoid here. So, trying to clear my calculator, sorry. So, if you remember, a trapezoid is B1 plus B2, so that's just base 1 and base 2, divided by 2, whoops, times the height. Okay, you could also say this 1/2 times B1 plus B2 times H. This might make more sense to you, and it's easier to put in the calculator. Okay, because again, we could do 0.5, base 1, it doesn't matter which one you call 2 and which one you call 1, because we're adding them, times the height, which is going to be between the two bases. And again, we just put that in our calculator, which gives us 20.79 kilometers squared, or kilometers, depending on how your accent goes. I'm guessing that this makes more sense because of how it goes in the calculator, but if not, whichever one, they're the same. They're the same. So whichever one works for you. Here we have a parallelogram, which if you go back, is base times height. Notice that our base is the side of the parallelogram over here, and our height is way over here. It doesn't, this little piece right here means nothing to us. We don't have to figure out what that length is right there. We're just going to do our height times our base, or base times our height, doesn't matter because we're multiplying, and we get 106.2 miles squared. If you think about it in miles, that's a humongous parallelogram. Oops, can't move it. There we go. All right, circles are a whole different ball game here. So notice it says use your calculator's value of pi. Okay, if you aren't, if you're at home doing this, use 3.14. You're going to be close enough. If you're in the classroom, ask me how to use the pi button. Okay, because it just makes your answer 100% more accurate. Okay, whereas if you use 3.14, you're probably going to be off by a few decimals, which isn't a big deal in the grand scheme of things. But if you were actually using this for cutting out a circle for something in your house, you would want to be as exact as possible. So you would want to use the pi button, or you can use 22/7, the fraction. That's the same thing as pi. Okay, so remember our, where am I? Area of a circle is pi r squared. Pi r squared. R is our radius. It's halfway. It's from the center of the circle out. So they give us here our radius. If they were to have given us the whole diameter, we'd have to cut it in half in order to put it into our formula, but we don't have to do that in this case. So pi times 11 squared. So I'm going to use I'm going to use 22/7 to be exact. And I get 380.3 rounding miles squared. Sometimes, and we'll talk about this more when we get there, it will say in relation to pi, which means you leave pi in the answer. So you would just do 11 squared and have pi, so you would have 121 pi miles squared. But we'll get there when we do volume, I believe. Okay, so we're going to do pi 7 squared in your calculator. And I get 154 miles squared. Okay, now we get to the fun apothem. So this A, that's the apothem. Okay, it's not that radius looking thing. It's called the apothem. It is the radius looking thing, but it's the apothem. Notice that it goes from the center of your polygon. This is for anything over a square. So pentagons on up. Here we have a hexagon. Notice it goes from the center over to the center of a side, not to a vertex. Okay, it goes to the center of the side. For the most part, everything you're gonna get the apothem, or I'm gonna show you how to find the apothem fairly easily. Okay, but for the most part, right now the apothem will be given to you. Okay, and so our formula is 1/2. Again, you can use 0.5, whatever, times the perimeter. That's the perimeter. And how do you find the perimeter? You add up all the sides. You might want to make a little note of that if you don't remember that. Perimeter, you add up all the sides. Okay, so you're going to multiply 0.5 times the perimeter that you calculate times your apothem. So here we have a pentagon, and each side, and it's a regular polygon, which means that every side's the same. I'm not going to give you any that aren't, okay, because this only works on regular polygons. So every side is 14.5. So that means our perimeter is 14 times 5, because there's 5 sides, which is 72.5. So our formula, remember, is 1/2 AP, or PA. In my head, it's AP. So that means we're going to do 0.5 times 10, that's our apothem, times 72.5. Doesn't matter which order you actually do that in. And that gives us 362.5. Okay, so notice we don't have any units here, so we would say units squared. You can't not do that just because there aren't any given to you. You have to say units squared. Or you can make them up if you want. You can say feet squared, whatever. Okay, so here's our apothem, here's our side. Oh, hey, this works on a triangle too, doesn't it? It does. Okay, it does work. Usually you'll only get them 5 sides and up, but it does work on anything. So our apothem, our sides, we're going to find the perimeter. It's regular, so we know they're all 16, so we can do 16 times 3, which gives us 48. So our perimeter is 48. So we're going to do 0.5 times 48 times 4.6. Sorry for that weird parenthesis there. That gives us 110.4 units squared. Oh, that's all I got. Ask questions.